On behalf of MSU Denver and the Center for Entrepreneurship, welcome. This week, we're talking to what I call inspired entrepreneurs, women who have a strong why behind their business. So today, I'd like to introduce you to Sandy Priester. She's the co-founder and executive director of Lifespark Cancer Resources. It's a leading edge nonprofit wellness organization that links Reiki and Healing Touch providers, volunteer providers, with cancer patients, bringing peace and healing to a terrifying cancer diagnosis with a non-drug solution to pain, stress, and depression. Over the past 20 years, Sandy trained and supported hundreds of Reiki and Healing Touch volunteer providers. The dynamic of her working with volunteers is so challenging, and that's going to be part of what comes into our conversation today about how difficult it is. You're paying people, and in this situation you're not paying people, you're just getting people to do it for the intrinsic rewards of feeling good about themselves. Okay, so Sandy, I would like to have you tell us about how what sort of impact LifeSpark has made over the past 20 years. What's like tell us about LifeSpark a little bit more. Tell us the impact it's made, and then we'll talk about how you started it.
Okay, we've been around 20 years and we have given Reiki and Healing Touch sessions to over 6,000 cancer patients. And we've given over 32,000 sessions. We work with 5 area hospitals, and our sessions help with pain, stress, and depression. And they really help a person get through cancer much more comfortably. And they also speed up the healing process. So it's a pretty cool thing that we're doing. And my cat just seems to want attention right now. Anyway, you'll see him now and then. He's helping.
Oh, very nice. Nice. Okay, so now tell us then, how did you start this? Like 20 years ago, what led you into this? What's your why behind it, and what inspired you to start?
It all started actually in 1989. I took my first Reiki class, and I'm going to share my screen for just a second because I want to show you. Um, Hold on, I thought I had this set up. Yeah, I want to show you. This is my husband. Okay, so now that you know what he looks like, I'm going to stop sharing. So I came home from my class. I was all excited. I had just learned Reiki. It was really cool. And I said, "Hey, Bob, I just learned this really cool modality, Reiki." And he said, "Oh, okay. Well, Sandy, hey, I really love you, and I'll support whatever you do, but I don't believe this stuff." He said, "I'm a nurse. He's a trained nurse. He's been a nurse for many years." He said, "I'm trained in the scientific method, and this isn't scientific." And so I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, you know what? I have to practice on somebody. So, you're gonna find out anyway." So the session, so we had a session probably that night or the next day, and within 5 minutes he was asleep. And he doesn't go to sleep, and he doesn't nap. So this was, so it's like, okay, cool. We had many other sessions over the next, I don't know, weeks, months, and he started to notice. Well, he noticed right away. Actually, he's a very practical guy. It's like, I'm really feeling relaxed. I'm sleeping better. Or my leg was hurting and now it's not. Or I was coughing and I'm just feeling a lot better now. He started to really notice the effects of it. And so this was really super important. It was important to him because he's going, wow, maybe this stuff actually does work. But it was also important to me because it showed me that there were real effects that you could see and tangible effects. So that was kind of the start. I'm going to fast forward this story for just a minute. He About 10 years later, when I was actually doing some Reiki classes, I asked him if he wanted to take a class. And to my great surprise, he said yes. And he not only learned Reiki, he learned several levels of Reiki. He learned Healing Touch, and he became a provider in LifeSpark. And last year, he was one of our top volunteer providers. He gave over, I think it was around 150 sessions to cancer patients last year.
Oh, and does
So
he do it in person or online?
some of these are in person and some are online. But anyway, that's sort of a just a little story about how it affected me and him.
That's one of your success stories, just one.
That just wanting attention. Sorry about this. My cat sits on my desk and gets lots of attention. So um, anyway, so that was kind of the start. I have been practicing Reiki for over 36 years. It has definitely changed my life. It completely changed the way I look at the world, the way I look at my health and my body, because it's natural, it's holistic. I don't take any drugs. It just helps me stay healthy and it helps me stay in balance. So it's fantastic. But Lifespark start. Do you want me to start? Yeah, how it
Yeah.
started.
Oh, yeah, yeah, for sure.
Lifespark started when I was running a nonprofit called Historic Preservation in Boulder, and
Oh,
I for 7 years, and it was time to leave, and I left, and I thought, oh, I'm just going to go get another, historic preservation job or something like that, and so I interviewed and I applied and I interviewed and kept getting turned down, and I mean, this went on for quite a while, and it was. Hang on, let me put him over here. Let's go. And it was I was really getting depressed. And then one morning I woke up and I just had a complete meltdown. I'm like, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I have no idea how I'm supposed to make this work. I give up. God, it's up to you. And so, but the one thing I said, the one thing I want to do is I want to do Reiki. I want to be a volunteer, or I want to do Reiki somewhere. So I followed up on that, and there was a place that was having Reiki and Healing Touch volunteers, and I signed up to volunteer. I went in and talked to them, and guess what? They needed a fundraising person.
gosh. And that's what you'd been doing.
It wasn't exactly the job I wanted, but hey, I thought, okay, this will take care of me for I need a job. Why not? So I took the job, and that is where this program began, because it was an organization called Qual Life Wellness Community. They offered all kinds of therapies for cancer patients, and so I not only was I volunteering, I was also working there. But pretty soon I was managing their volunteers, and pretty soon we were starting to develop this program called Healing Buddies, and we developed the whole structure of it there. And then that's where it all started.
Wow. So then did it become LifeSpark or did you have to start
So,
something else?
so we've been going strong for about 2 years. And then Qual Life closed. And it's like, oh, dang, what do we do now? So we looked at several other nonprofits that we thought might take our program. None of them were ready or in a position to do that. And so we said, okay, this is a successful program. We're going to go for it. We started a nonprofit. And that's where it all started in 2005, 20 years ago.
Oh my gosh. And what was the process of that? Because, most people, we know about nonprofits. We don't really know about nonprofits. Most people don't really know what is involved. Don't you have to be a corporation for a while and then you apply for nonprofit
No, no,
status?
no. So you go through the IRS, you apply for nonprofit status. It took us forever to get. I mean, here we had this program up and running. I think it took us 5 or 6 months to get our nonprofit status, which was just like very, very stressful, because we were trying to raise money, but we couldn't. We said, well, we think we're going to be a nonprofit. We're waiting, but none of the donations were tax exempt until we had that. So that was a process to get that in place. And there are legal things and there are structural things and things you have to put in place. So we did all that. It was quite a process.
To apply for nonprofit, do you have to have a full business plan? What kind of thing do you have to have in order to get that applied?
No, no, no. Actually a fairly simple process that you apply. You tell them what you're going to do. You tell them your mission, and then they take their time and they approve it. Although I think they're getting faster. And I do have some slides on our impact if you want me to show
Oh,
that.
yes, please.
Okay, let me share my screen again. Uh, there. Okay, let's go past Bob. Okay, so first of all, Reiki. What is Reiki? And I'd love to have everybody in the chat. Just put in the chat. Do you know what it is? Have you ever had a session? Are you familiar with it? These are hands-on therapies. It takes about an hour. Healing touch, very similar to Reiki, except it has a little different origins. The hand positions are different. The techniques are different. Those are the two therapies we use. But in Lifespark, this is our statement of what we do every day. Lifespark provides free Reiki and Healing Touch sessions to individuals with cancer because we believe that everyone deserves support and healing. And so here's what I already told you: 20 years, 6,000 people served, 32,000 Lifespark healing sessions. And then our hospital program, we work out of 5 hospitals. So we go into the cancer infusion room and we offer hands-on sessions. They're about 20 minutes long for people while they receive chemo in the hospital. And then this is a survey that we did at UC Health with 35 cancer patients. We gave them surveys before the session and after the session. After a 15 to 20 minute session, pain dropped by 1/3, stress and anxiety dropped by 2/3. So that gives you some quick statistics about what we do. We also serve nurses. We've done a lot of sessions for nurses, and we actually did a small research project on nurses and Reiki to see if it would improve their resilience, and it did. It was great.
Wow, tell us a little bit more about that. Well, first, I want to say that I've actually worked in the infusion center doing Reiki on cancer patients through this program. And because the nurses were used to us being there, when somebody was new, like a new patient came in, they would call us, they'd call us and say, hey, come over and help this person, because people are terrified to start chemo because it's like a chemical that kills the rapidly dividing cells, and you're going to allow this into your body. But they're already there and they've already made the decision. And so for us to be there to help them calm their body, to allow the medicine to work is huge and important. And the nurses notice the importance. But partially because Sandy has done the following research. So to talk about the research, because this is huge, and they know because they understand what it is. They've done it themselves. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, so there's actually there are about 100 studies on Reiki and Healing Touch. And the studies in general, they show that it is safe, totally safe. That's really important. It helps with stress, depression, and pain. The study that we did was specifically to see if this could be a self-care practice for nurses. We trained them in Reiki so they would give it to themselves. I mean, I've been doing Reiki for like 35 years. I give myself Reiki and Healing Touch all the time. And so this was for them to be able to practice it on themselves. And they did. And we looked at it over immediately after the training. Their resilience improved quite a bit. And then we looked at it at 3 months and at 6 months, and it kind of dropped over 3 and 6 months, partly because some of them stopped practicing. But it improved their resilience. And of course, resilience is a big thing in any profession like nursing, because it's an indicator of burnout. If a person burns out, that's when they stop caring about people, and when we stop caring about people, that's when it doesn't make any sense anymore. Our job doesn't make any sense anymore, and we leave. So it was really good. We did this with UC Health. It was a formal IRB approved study. And we're actually going to be presenting it at the Oncology Nursing Society conference in April.
So did you guys find any data that says it increased their, normally a infusion room nurse stays there for 4 years and this has increased it to 5? Or what is the data that you ended up, what's the result of your test, of your research?
So research is is generally much shorter than that. That's the next study that we want to do. We would love to get funding for that study, but it's pretty expensive. But yes, one of the reasons we did this study to begin with was because, and this was before COVID, we were actually planning this before COVID, where we were told that the average oncology nurse, it takes them I think it's like a year and a half to get up to speed. I can't remember the numbers now. It takes quite a long time for them to really get into the groove of being an oncology nurse. There's so much they have to know. There's so much knowledge, and it moves so fast. And then by the time they really know what they're doing and are up to speed, that's when they start leaving. I mean, the turnover in oncology nurses is very high because it's so very stressful. So that's one of the reasons we did this study, was to see if we could help with that process. And of course, this is an initial study. It was small numbers. There were 16 nurses. We really need to do a study of about 40 nurses so that it has more relevance, so that when hospitals look at these numbers, they'll go, oh, this actually applies to us. This could help our nursing staff. So that's next things we want to do.
Excellent. So what has been your biggest challenge, or what have been your biggest challenges in doing this business?
So, okay, so running a nonprofit has all kinds of challenges, just like running a business of any kind. And I understand that a lot of you are getting ready or thinking about starting a business. So, some of the things are unique to nonprofits. One of the things that's unique to nonprofits is fundraising. I mean, if you're starting your own business, you're trying to raise money, you're trying to sell products or services. In a nonprofit, you're trying to get donations. That's kind of the difference in how that works. And so getting funding is quite the process. One of the things that I've learned, that I've actually known for quite some time, is that foundation funding can be very very unstable. So for example, let me give you an example of this. When we were at QualLife, that organization received a $50,000 grant every year for many, many years from one of the local cancer charities. Then one year, it was one of the years I was there. Um, I don't know what happened. Maybe they changed board members. Who knows? They changed direction. They decided, oh, we're tired of funding this organization. Let's do something new. Let's try something new. So they stopped funding QualLife. Boom, zero, period. That was it. I mean, we were expecting this funding. We get it every year. Zero. That was and that was part of the reason that QualLife closed, was because $50,000 was a very significant amount of their funding. And so when that happens, that has a huge impact on the organization. So that's just one example of foundations being unreliable. The other thing is government funding. Of course, Lifespark's never received government funding. But if you look at what's going on the national level now, many of there's huge cuts in government funding for many of the nonprofits across the country and across the state. And so this won't affect us because we've never received government funding, but many nonprofits count on government funding. And so this is going to have a huge impact. We're probably going to see a lot of nonprofits close because of this, because, even a 10 to 20% cut in your funding. I mean, when you have everything structured to work within a certain dollar amount that you are working with, and you lose 10 to 20% overnight, it can completely destabilize you, and it can make you go under. So it's and the same thing in a for-profit business. If you have one of your major suppliers or purchase, you have a major customer that buys like 20 to 30% of your products, and all of a sudden they move to Jamaica. I don't know. I mean, it can be very unstabilizing. So it's the same thing. So that's one of the things is foundation funding. You really can't count on it in any big way. We do get some foundation funding, but the main thing for fundraising for nonprofits is individual donors. I mean, that's where it's at. That's where you get your stable funding source, because individuals, they stay with you through thick and through thin. And most of the donors for Lifespark, of course, are people who have had cancer in their family, or who have received services from us, or know people who have received services. So it's people that are directly impacted by our cause. And that's true across most nonprofits. So funding is always a big one. And fundraising is an absolutely key skill for anybody that's thinking about starting a nonprofit. Another challenge. Let me talk about another challenge. There are several. There are many. It has to do with people. Any business you're in, It's getting the right people is key, whether in a for-profit or a nonprofit. In nonprofits, we always have a board of directors. It's part of the legal structure of a nonprofit. You have to have a board of directors. Now, if you decide that you are, those of you out there decide you're going to be part of a corporation, you will have a board of directors because they have board of directors, board of governors. But if you're a sole proprietor, you don't have to worry about it, which there's so many advantages to that.
Right? Or LLC. Oh my gosh, right? You don't have to worry about it. Mhm.
But anyway, as a nonprofit, so boards can be fabulous. They can do so much work for you. They can really move your mission forward, or they can be completely dysfunctional. And of course, I've been in the nonprofit world for over 30 years, and I've seen both. And for example, we had a board member who came in who did not have she didn't have any nonprofit experience. She knew very little about our therapies, but anyway, somehow she ended up on our board. And she wanted to become the event chair. And she talked the other board members into her making her event chair. And she was unwilling to accept guidance or feedback. She wanted to do it her way. And then, of course, many things went wrong with the event. After the event was over, and there were many problems, of course, she wanted to blame other people and be mad. I mean, isn't this just like a dysfunctional family? I mean, but here's the problem. So she also was quite persuasive, and she resigned, and she talked two other board members into resigning with her. And so I mean, so there you have it. Sometimes you can have board members that can really do a lot of damage. So the point of me telling you that story is if at some point you are either serving on a board or you are starting your own nonprofit and you have a board, it's really important that you pick your board members. One of the things that we do now is board members cannot join our board unless they have been actively involved in Lifespark, so that we know that they have a personal commitment and understanding of our work. So that's just one of the things that we changed to make it work better. So that's a challenge. And then, of course, the third thing that is always of issue of any business or nonprofit is, who are your people? Who are your employees? Who are your volunteers? In our case, we have 60 to 80 active volunteers at any given time. And so recruiting them and organizing them and keeping them is, always a big challenge, but also a big blessing. We have so many amazing providers, volunteers program. Um,
Have you ever had any, this is weird, have you ever had any complaints about providers from clients?
so we do have a feedback process. Very, very rarely. It's happened. I mean, usually what happens is the cancer participant will just quit, will stop receiving sessions. And sometimes they'll tell us, usually they don't. Very rarely do we get any kind of complaints from about our providers, fortunately. I see we have some comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Oh
should.
yeah, let's go. Okay, if a board member is not following the mission of the company, how are you able to remove them from the board? Or what is the process of that kind of discussion? Oh yeah.
So that is a very tricky thing, because, removing a board member, oh my gosh, nobody wants to hurt their feelings. Nobody wants to kick somebody off. It's really challenging to remove them. You absolutely can. You have to have, in most cases, in most bylaws, you have a document called bylaws, and that's your governing principles of the nonprofit. And in most cases, your bylaws will say, you need like a 2/3 majority to remove a board member, and it's that simple. I mean, it sounds simple, but in the real world of making it happen, board members do not like to kick other board members off. It's really hard to do unless that person has really made everybody really mad.
Hey, one thing that we need to talk about here is this idea that the board can actually eliminate a founder, right?
Well, yes, we actually had that. I've also been through that issue many years ago, where there was a couple of board members that came in and really wanted to take over and wanted to change things and thought they knew a lot more than they actually did. Wanted to eliminate our volunteer appreciation event because we were coddling our volunteers and we were babying them, and they shouldn't be babied, shouldn't be. Anyway, yeah, and so yeah, but yeah, so boards can boards can eliminate a founder if you have a super majority, but fortunately in our case, the most of the board members were very very loyal to me and knew what I had done and knew what I did, so they were not interested in. So that didn't happen. Yeah,
Good.
it didn't happen. They tried and it failed.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's crazy. That's just crazy. But they do that in corporations too.
Yes, actually, they had a secret meeting without me to try and see if they couldn't drum up support to get people turned against me, but it didn't work.
So good. Well, it's such a hard business to be in. I can't even imagine that they would think that they don't need you to be there. That's what's surprising to me. Because really, when you're talking about volunteers and you're talking about a business like that, you need everybody. You need everybody hands-on, you know?
Yes, yes, and working together, it's just like any business or anything that you're trying to do. It's the people that make it happen, and the good relationships that you have with those people is so important. But not only good relationships, but structure. So everybody knows what their job is and what they're supposed to do and what the rules are, so they know what they can and can't do. That's the other side of it. You want to work with people, but you also have to have guardrails, so that people can't just run off and do whatever they want. So you
Hmm.
have structure. I mean, we have very specific rules in Lifespark of what people can and cannot do. Um, they cannot use other modalities. They cannot share intuitive information. I mean, most healers have lots of intuitive guidance that comes through. And they anyway, just some other things that they can and
Mhm.
can't.
Oh, good. And now those things aren't necessarily in your bylaws. They're more in your training, your volunteer training, right? Or do you actually have that stuff in your bylaws
So
too?
that's not in our bylaws. That's in our volunteer training. Yeah, yeah.
Excellent. So tell us about some times that you've pivoted.
Yeah, so our biggest pivot was COVID. I mean, that was a huge pivot. So here we are. So we've been around at that point of around 15 years, and we've been doing all of these sessions hands-on in person. And we do these sessions at donated space. So we work out of churches, we work out of spas, we work out of chiropractors' offices, anybody that has space that they will donate to us for the sessions. And so, of course, COVID comes around and we go, oh my gosh, we can't do in person sessions anymore for two reasons. First of all, I mean, we could have worn masks, but cancer patients are at much higher risk of infections and so forth because their immune systems are compromised. And so we really could not. I mean, we just felt it was totally unethical to even with masks to try to do in person sessions with immune compromised people. So we had a choice. Do we just shut down for a while? Oh, of course, we all thought COVID was going to last for what, 3 months? Didn't everybody? Do we just shut down, for a few months, maybe 6 months at the most, or do we do something different? And of course, the thing about these therapies, the really cool thing about Reiki and Healing Touch is that you can do them remotely. They're very effective remotely, and so that's what we decided to do. We pivoted and we changed basically overnight from in-person sessions to remote sessions. But in order to make it work, again, I talked about structure, having the structure in place so things work. So the first thing we did was we set up Zoom accounts. We paid for professional Zoom accounts so that our practitioners could use our Zoom account because a lot of them didn't have professional accounts. So the first thing they would do is they would meet over Zoom, so you could see the person, so you could connect with them, you could bond with them. Really important in a healing session. Then the next thing we did was we actually purchased some really super high quality guided imagery. And I don't know if people know what guided imagery is. It's like a meditation that sort of, now imagine that you're walking in a park and the sun is out and beautiful grass, that kind of thing. And then, imagine that you're relaxing and whatever. So we purchased some very high quality guided imagery specifically designed for people with cancer. So we had one to relieve stress, one to relieve depression, one to help with pain, one to help support the immune system. And so we paired those together so that the provider They would meet with the participant over Zoom, and then they would have the cancer patient lie down, take their headphones or phone or computer with them, and listen to the guided imagery during the session so that the cancer patient would have something to focus on. Because one of the things we knew was that if somebody's just laying there, there's nobody in the room with them, they're by themselves, they're going, what's going on? Is anything happening? So this gave them the structure of of words and things to think about to keep their mind focused on healing. And it proved to be a very successful combination. And I'm so glad we did that because of course we all know COVID lasted for many years. I mean, in terms of the restrictions on it. And we were able to have a very successful program. We really developed a whole remote program. In fact, this is where I share my screen again. Hold on. So this is what our program looked like before COVID. Everything was located up and down the Front Range in physical locations from Fort Collins to Colorado Springs. This is what it looks like now. We have people all over the country that give sessions and receive sessions, including one person in Alaska. One of our providers is in Alaska. We have a provider in Mexico, and we have a provider in Portugal. And we just matched our first person in India, that cancer patient in India. And we were fortunate that we had a provider who is from India that we matched with the person in India. So I don't know if they speak the same dialect. I know there's a lot of dialects, but at least they understood the culture and the time zones and all that stuff. So anyway, so that was our pivot. It was a pretty significant pivot. So we are now doing both remote sessions and in-person sessions because we started going back to in-person sessions in 2022. And so we have a full in-person program now too.
Wow. Well, there is the global part so this is a global entrepreneurship class most of the time. So this is a session. So there we go. You're in Mexico, India, Portugal. That's very cool. And
Yeah,
how is and those a couple of those, the Mexico and the Portugal are actually providers, right?
those are providers. And one of the things we've learned, you learn with all this stuff. The one in Mexico has been very challenging because I don't know, the time zones are, I don't know, I don't understand it. But there's a lot of cultural differences, which makes communication difficult. And she doesn't use Zoom, and I don't understand that. Maybe some people on this call do, but for some reason Zoom doesn't work there like it does here, and so the communication has been very challenging. So I doubt that we will add any more providers from outside of the country just because of the communication challenges.
Mm.
Um, but we are serving people if they're in a like Portugal. Now we've had no problems in Portugal. Of course, that provider is from the United States, so she knows how to use all of our technology and stuff. But anyway, so we're just sort of learning as we go and being very careful about out of the country providers because there can be a lot of challenges.
Mm.
The main thing is though that we are serving people all across the country, and so if any of the people on this call have friends, relatives who have cancer, if they're open to remote sessions, not everyone is, but if they're open to remote sessions, we can serve them. They just need to sign up on our website.
Wow. Now, does like if somebody signs up tomorrow, does that mean they immediately get services like within the next couple weeks, or does it take a while to get serviced?
So for our remote program, we don't have any waiting lists. So they can usually it usually takes a week or two to get things set up and get the match. We have to find somebody that has the same schedule that they have. So usually a week or two to get started. If they're here along the Colorado Front Range, now that we have a longer waiting list for that. That can take up to 2 months, depending on the location. Hey, I see another cat. Another cat. Yay. Yay for cats.
My cat Mimi likes to hang out in my computer and she's bugging me right now too.
Andy, what are some of what's next? You mentioned something about more research. Yeah, what do you see in the next 5 years? What will be different in the next 5 years?
So there's several things. We are really so the last 5 years has really been a process of adapting to the changes of, making our sessions remote, getting people used to the idea of receiving remote sessions, promoting in different ways, all of that. And then, of course, a big, huge process in getting our in-person program up and started again. But now, this past year, and what we're working on last year and this year is automations, so that we can automate more of our processes, so that we don't have as much staff time devoted to making the matches. We have matching software we've been working on for a while that will sort of automatically make the matches and make things a lot more streamlined and faster, which will help us to be more efficient with our staff time so that we can serve more people ultimately. So automations is a big thing. I'm also working with Zapier to get some of our tasks automated. Anyway, a lot of automations. And then one main other thing is research. I mean, one of the things I know about research is that it is really super key to getting our medical colleagues on board with these therapies. We know they work. We know these therapies are successful and very helpful. But just like my husband, I mean, when he first was introduced, it's like, well, that's not scientific. Forget that, But most hospital providers aren't married to a Reiki practitioner that can give them sessions. So we have to give them the research that shows them the evidence. And so, but research is very expensive. And of course, the thing about this is, I mean, pharmaceutical companies, there's huge profit margin. They can pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for research because they make millions of dollars on their products. In these therapies, there is no big profit margin. There's no way you can make a lot of money on this. I mean, you can make some money as a practitioner, but so that's one of the reasons there's not a lot of research on it. Plus, I'll be honest, there have been forces on the other side that have not wanted us to get research because it competes with the drugs. So but research is super important, and that's something we really want to be doing more of, so we can provide evidence for these therapies.
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, what kind of R&D is available for these kinds of practices? And is it like massage therapy where you learn new techniques or use different products?
What kind of R&D? I'm not sure what you're asking. I mean,
Oh, like what about so the additional research? You did it with the nurses. What
oh,
would be the next type of research
yeah.
you
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. So right now there've been a number of studies on, like, for example, we really need a big study on pain. We know that these therapies help with pain, but there've been some small studies that show that, but there haven't been any really super big studies, like a big study like 50 to 100 patients or more. And the other thing we need is things with biomarkers. So, like, for example, there was a study that was done with heart rate variability, where heart patients that had a heart attack, they were hooked up to all the monitors, and so people went in and did Reiki, and they could actually see how the Reiki, lowered their heart rate and increased their heart rate variability, and so there was empirical evidence, biomarkers, and that's very expensive to do. Or, for example, saliva testing is one way that you can test for stress that has again, a biomarker, as opposed to someone saying, yes, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm now at a 4 and I was an 8. That evidence is great, but biomarkers are really helpful, very expensive, very complicated to do. So those are some of the kinds of things that we need. We need more research on pain. We need more research for self Reiki for nurses, because I just think that could completely shift for a lot of hospitals that are having such a huge staffing crisis now, because nurses are burning out left and right. It's one of the things they could do to support their staff, so their staff wouldn't burn out, would stay longer.
Mhm. Excellent. So tell us something about your business that would surprise us.
Well, I think perhaps it doesn't surprise me, but it might surprise other people of just how effective remote sessions are. People think, remote, what is that? How does that work? And it's hard to explain, but results are clear. I mean, we've done surveys with people, and they give us a 95% rating on, 95% of them say it was helpful or very helpful in whatever issue it was that they were working on. I mean, I've done remote sessions where people say, "Oh my gosh, I felt something happen," and and then I've also done remote sessions where they got better. And of course, sometimes people get better and they don't attribute it to the therapy, and maybe it wasn't, maybe it wasn't the therapy. But for example, my husband was giving a session to a person in our Lifespark program who had never, well, I think she'd had in-person sessions before, but she was having a remote session, and during the remote session, the camera is not on, so she has no idea what he's doing. He was doing a healing touch technique called magnetic clearing. It's where you bring your energy, your hands through the energy field to pull through and pull out anything that's not in alignment. You just you're clearing their energy field. And at the end of the session, she said, "What were you doing towards the end? I felt something going through my body, like from head to foot, several different times. What were you doing?" you know? And so things like that, not everyone is as, what's the word, as aware of their physical body that they would be able to feel that, but some people do. And so those are the kinds of things that are just, make us all smile, because we know that it's just one way of showing that these therapies are really, really effective and really helpful. So remote sessions really are just as effective as in person. Yeah, and that's something that may surprise a lot of people.
When I do it, because I do remote sessions with people and I have my camera on so they can see, but
Oh,
there are times when people will say, "Oh, I felt this," or "Oh, I felt that." And that is cool when
yeah.
when somebody has an actual feeling of it. So I use my massage table and I like pretend their body is there. I
Hmm.
pretend it's there and I just move my hands in all the places and
Yes,
do the whole process. It takes an hour to do this process. And
yes.
it does seem to help people. And even if they just fall asleep, the whole point is to take the body from this fight or flight stage, which we're all in all the time these days, to a place of rest and restore so their body can heal itself. So that's kind of how we used to sell it to the people in the infusion center. Most of the time, I'd say, it's hands-on healing, kind of like Jesus used to be able to heal with their hands. And then I would say the sympathetic to parasympathetic nervous system situation. And there would be people that would say, "I'm Christian. That's against my religion." And I'd be like, "Okay, that's so interesting because this is totally according to the Catholic Christian sort of way, this idea of healing with hands, except it's outside of religion. So it really is outside of that. We don't really bring that into it, but it was interesting the resistance that people had when we were selling it, had to kind of sell it because it's not like we could do it on people that didn't want it.
Which hospital were you in?
I was at Anschutz.
You're at Anschutz, yeah. Okay, okay. Because one of the things that we have a fact sheet that we send, and the way that we normally sell it is just that it's a relaxation therapy. It will help you relax and feel better. And in fact, that's how we actually got into the hospital in the first place. That's how Steve Tung, who very much was a believer in our therapies, that's how he got us through all of the layers of bureaucracy. It took a year to get approvals into that hospital. It's not easy, you guys, to get into a hospital with these kinds of therapies. But that's how he brought it through, was calling it a relaxation therapy. And it is. It helps people relax. And medical people know that when your body relaxes, it's more it can heal easier and faster. I mean, that's just a known fact in the medical community. So relaxation is the way that we often sell it to that community.
Yeah, for sure. For
Yeah,
sure. Okay,
yeah.
let's see. Josie asked, "Do you think you will expand the business to people with chronic illness and not just cancer patients?" Oh,
So the answer is no, and the reason is because there are so many. We could never possibly fulfill our mission of serving all the cancer patients that are out there. It's true, these therapies would be fabulous for anyone with a chronic illness, but in order for us to stay focused, we stay focused on cancer. One of the things I learned, I have an MBA. One of the things I learned a long time ago in business school and in other trainings that I've had, is that, to really be successful in a business requires focus and staying in your lane. And the more spread out you become, the more of a generalist you become, the more competition you have. Whereas if you are focused on whatever it is that you are really good at and you really know your stuff in, you have less and less competition because you do one thing and you do it extraordinarily well. And nobody can compete. Nobody can compete with us because we have 20 years of experience working with cancer patients, with these therapies. And we're the biggest organization in the country that does this with volunteers. And that's because we've stayed in our lane, we've stayed focused. I feel that one of the mistakes that Qualife Wellness Community made, another thing that they did, I'm not saying that this is the reason they closed, but I don't think it helped them. Towards the end, when they were struggling with funding and trying to figure out, they lost that grant, they were trying to figure out how to make ends meet, they expanded their purpose to cancer patients and any life-challenging illness. And it was great. I loved it. It was wonderful to serve those people, but I don't think it helped them in the end in terms of their donor base and their support, because they became, again, more of a specialist. And again, if you look at the medical community, we work with the medical community. In the medical community, if you're not a specialist, forget it. Everyone in the medical community is you're a heart doctor, or you're a children's doctor, or you're a heart doctor for children. They're so specialized. So staying specialized is really important to our remaining successful.
I love that. Okay, so what advice do you have for new entrepreneurs looking to start a business?
Oh, I actually have a slide for this. So let me share my screen again. Hold on. Let's see here. Get in here. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so if you were to start a nonprofit, there are several things I want to talk about. The first one is legal. We talked about that a little bit. You have to get your 501c3 nonprofit status from the IRS. You file tax returns just like a for-profit does. You really are going to need fundraising skills. If you don't have fundraising skills, or if you don't have somebody on your immediate team with fundraising skills, forget it, because you've got to be able to raise money in order to have the revenue to run a nonprofit. So that's an absolutely essential skill. Program structure. You need to figure out, what is your structure? In other words, so if you're going to start I'm just going to make this up. If you're going to start a food pantry for people that are homeless, okay, what kind of food are you going to bring in? What, are you cooking? What are you making for them? Are you cooking things? How many sacks of potatoes does it take to cook, this soup? I mean, all the structural things that you need to have written down, documented, and figured out in order to make the program work, the program structure. I mean, if you're doing something for pets, how do you take care of them? How do you feed them? How do you exercise them? What kinds of volunteers do you need? So that structure. I mean, obviously in Lifespark, we have requirements for becoming a provider, Reiki and Healing Touch provider. How many sessions do you have to have had? We have training, we have structure on what they can and can't do. We are the ones that make the matches for them. They have a certain length of time that they can give sessions, and then they have to check in. They can't just give sessions forever. So lots of structure, lots of structure. The more structure, actually, the happier volunteers are, which goes to my next point. Volunteers need training and they need structure. Because if it's wide open, then you have people doing things that don't make any sense and could potentially make you look bad, as well as sort of going outside of your mission. So volunteers need training and structure. And then the last one is passion, and I want to talk about that. So passion, that's what really has started me on this path. I started when I learned Reiki, and then I learned Healing Touch, and it became such an integral part of my life. And it was so important to me that when I was at that juncture where I couldn't find a job, I said, hey, this is the one thing I want to do. I want to do Reiki. No matter what else, I'm going to volunteer somewhere and do Reiki and Healing Touch. And of course, that's when the job manifested. It wasn't the job I thought I wanted, but it was the job that took me to the place where we created Lifespark. So passion has many reasons for it. If you have a specific passion for, I don't know, maybe helping immigrants, or maybe saving the environment, whatever it is, and you want to start a nonprofit, you have to have enough passion to get you through the difficult years because it's a lot of work, and there are times when you will feel completely alone and unsupported. There are times when you'll go, how am I going to make this work? How am I going to pay the bills? And there are times when you'll be working 60 hours a week and you're going, why am I doing this? So here's the question, why am I doing this? Well, for me, I know why I'm doing it because I know that these therapies are making a profound difference in people's lives. I know that this is helping people. It's making a difference. That's why I do it. That's when I get up every morning. That's why I do it. And it's the same thing for you if you're ever thinking about starting a nonprofit or a for-profit for that matter, too. What is your passion? What is your commitment? Because without that passion and that commitment, I would have given up years ago. There's so many times I would have given up when things looked bad. I would have given up when COVID came along. I mean, I would have given up years ago when the board tried to kick me off. I mean, I would have given up many times, but I knew this was my purpose and my passion. And so I didn't give up. I mean, one of the things about a nonprofit that you need to know is that I could be making 2 to 3 times as much money in a corporate job. And, if that was what was important to me, that's what I'd be doing. But would I be happy in a corporate job? No, probably not, because I wouldn't be making this much of a difference. So you really have to weigh what is it that you really want to do? What is it that really calls your spirit, calls your soul? Because that's what will stay with you through the difficult times and through the good times.
I love that. Hey, one question I thought it'd be really interesting for people to know how you fundraise. Like, what does fundraising look like for LifeSpark?
So we have events. We have a Night Sparks auction actually coming up in a couple of months, where we have people donate all kinds of auction items. We have self-care items. We have metaphysical items because we have so many practitioners in that field, and then we have trips and home and garden stuff. So that's an online event that we do. We raise, and we have sponsors. We raise about $30,000 with that event. We have an annual, what we call our Touching Tomorrow luncheon. It's a free luncheon where we bring people in for a free luncheon and then we ask them to donate. They know that it's a fundraiser, but we have speakers and they hear from cancer patients, and we raise probably 35,000 from that event. And then we have individual donors that donate all the time. We also get a few grants, not a lot. We haven't foundations haven't really discovered us yet. I mean, I shouldn't say that. They don't really understand what we do, most of them. So, but that's okay. So that's how we raise money, is through events and individual donors. And I think we have some questions here. Let's see. Do you think you will expand the business? Oh, no, we already covered that. We covered that. Okay, never mind.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you know what? I've so loved this, and I appreciate you being here. So I'd like to turn the recording off and then, open it up to a much more relaxed version of questions. So thank you, thank you, thank you, and I will stop the recording.